Yeah, I mean, I am a fierce competitor, but I think even more so is that I just have a curious mindset and I always want to keep learning. And I think that breeds success. And for me, like being thankful helps me be like happier. And so that's like another thing. I was about to enter that Steve Stash, that little like fresh cut single track.
Yep.
And I would think I was like fifth at that point. I'm okay, that's perfect. Can make a big dig for icebreaker. And then yeah, a rider on the left-hand side like turned into me, and I don't know if there's their body or their bar, because like I was like this, and they hit.
All right, Mark Deering here from the Adventure Channel. We have a special treat for you tonight. We have Paige Onweller. If you haven't heard her name and you watch any cycling, we're gonna have to ask what rock you need to get out from underneath. She is a superstar, rock star, traveling nationally, doing all this amazing gravel stuff. Paige, why don't you say hi and introduce yourself?
Thanks for having me on, Mark. Yeah, I'm super stoked to be here. I'm based in Bella Vista, Arkansas now, but was formerly in Michigan for most of my adult life. So it's always good to connect with the Michigan crew. And yeah, I really appreciate having me on here.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you have a ton of fans around here, as you know or don't know. There's a ton of us that are super fans. Every time the Lifetime comes out with a new video, we're like waiting for like, hey, where's our favorite local?
Thank you.
So jumping right in, I thought to get some of those who don't know you, and I don't know your backstory besides a little bit of stalking I did before this. Why don't you tell us about Paige, the backstory? Like you've only been racing for 3-4 years now.
Yeah, yeah.
In cycling world.
Correct. Yeah, so I was a runner before. I ran in college, ran at Ferris State University, and kind of considered myself addicted to running. And like most people have heard, a lot of runners are pretty prone to injuries, and that was also my story as well. And I ended up tearing my hamstring a little before COVID, had a really long rehab during that time, and was introduced to riding bikes. And for me as a runner, riding bikes was always associated with being injured. Like when I had stress fractures before, which I had a lot of those too, because I had REDs and a history of recurrent stress fractures. But yeah, the bike was always associated with injury. So I would say I didn't really enjoy riding bikes. And most time I was like going to spin class, or eventually I did get a trainer at home and had like a old school felt bike on it was an 8-speed 3x that I had set up. And yeah, eventually, it's right around COVID, I kind of started riding more, and actually got recruited to join an esports racing team, because Zwift was, at that time and even now, a very friendly way to start bike racing, especially if you're an adult and you don't have experience bike handling, or you're really intimidated to ride in a group. And for me, like at that point, I was 31 years old, and I didn't really know how to clip in or clip out of my bike. So trying to learn as an adult was really hard. And, I like pushing myself and working out to, high capacity. So Zwift racing was good for that. Anyone can relate to pegging up right indoors. So yeah, automatically, I kind of really liked it. And then, anytime you have an opportunity to race at a higher level, you generally take it if you're a competitor. And for me, I was like, oh, this esports is a really high level. I started Googling the competitors that I was, racing against, and a lot of them were professional athletes. And I was like, wow, like, am I good at this? Like, should I try riding bikes a little bit more? So yeah, I quit running back in 2021, 2022 timeframe. And at that point was really focused on esports and then also time trialing. And that was kind of like what I thought I would focus on, because it was less skill intensive. And at my age, thought that might be more appropriate to allocate some resources there. But yeah, I didn't really have the best experience. And at that time, gravel was also taking off. And so I signed up for a gravel race and kind of told myself, if I don't die and I like it, then maybe I'll do more of the gravel races. Yeah, and that was actually August 2021 was my first like mass start gravel race. I did like a COVID gravel race back in Michigan. I don't remember exactly which one it was, but it started off in waves, so I don't really count that one. But yeah, I ended up getting like fifth overall at the Garmin Gravel Worlds, and that was 150 miles. But it was looking back on it, it was pretty funny because I didn't know how to ride in a pack. And, you're just like dangling off the pack, think you're getting
Sure.
a draft to be actually
Wasting all your energy.
yeah, so I pretty much did a 150-mile time trial and I was like, oh, this was so fun. And yeah, then I signed up for Barry Roubaix and I got second that fall. That was the year they did it in the fall.
Mm-hmm.
And then yeah, just kind of from there, I started seeing more results and kept learning, kept working really hard, and still working as a PA in the urgent cares. And yeah, finally, like in October of 2022, won like one of the higher level bike races. That's when I won Big Sugar and opened a lot of doors to get higher level contracts and to race full time. So yeah, I quit my job in medicine and bought a Sprinter van and I raced a lot
Hashtag van
last
life.
year. Yeah, so last year, 2023, that was my first year racing full time, and I did 34 bike races. I raced time trial, road, crits, gravel, mountain biking. Ultimately, because I knew I had so much experience to be gained and learn, and I was like, I'm just gonna race my brains out, and
Sure.
and eventually something will click. Yeah, and then this year raced a lot less, predominantly because I had a pretty big injury at the beginning of the year. But yeah, I ended up having a stellar year in 2024, was third in the Grand Prix overall and a podium at a lot of the big, high level races and first
Yes.
American finisher at Unbound. So that was really, really big 12 weeks after ankle surgery. So yeah, that's been kind of my trajectory into sport and not normal for most of my colleagues that I'm racing against. I have a very different path than a lot of them, which at times can make things a little bit more challenging for me. But I try to be an example to a lot of people that you can start riding at an older age and does take a lot more work, but yeah, you can still teach an old dog new tricks.
Hey folks, Mark Deering here from the Adventure Channel. Just wanted to formally introduce myself in case you haven't seen me without the helmet on and the full kit. My day job, my real job is real estate. If you have any real estate questions, if you're looking to move near the trails, if you're looking to move out of state, any of those types of things, we help hundreds of different mountain biking and adventure families find their base camp to live at. We want to do the same with you. We couldn't do this without you guys, and we love working with folks that have the same passion as us. Yeah. No, that's awesome. So I'm just shocked that you said not too many years ago you were learning to clip in and like knowing where you're at now. I mean, like I say, if even if you know Paige's name, go to YouTube and start typing in Lifetime Gravel Series and just start watching some of that. And to know that that's all 3 or 4 years, 3 years technically in the making, right? I mean, 3 years in the making is just crazy to me. But that's what I wanted to kind of ask is like, there's got to be like some crazy story of like where this competitiveness comes from, and from an early age. So like, so it was basically running. Running was kind of the drive, and all of us that like these endurance sports, we like the camaraderie part of it, right? But then the training, the competitiveness. I mean, you sound like a fierce competitor. Like, is that like in everything, would you say? I mean,
oh, for sure. I mean, you kind of have to be if you like quit your job and go race bikes full time. But yeah, I mean, I am a fierce competitor, but I think even more so is I just have a curious mindset and I always want to keep learning. And I think that breeds success. So like even young athletes, like I talk to youth athletes a lot and the youth parents and talking with them. And a lot of it's, like, oh, they got to do this, got to do that. And I think like above all, like you have to keep things fun and you have to stay curious to learning. And I would say like if an athlete has those two things like in that mindset, then they're going to excel. And so, I am definitely competitive, but being really competitive can actually be like a downfall too, because you end up like wanting so much and being really hard on yourself. And I have had to learn that the hard way. I've had some really bad races or setbacks or mechanicals at really important events that kind of derailed me a bit. And like it was through that process and like through more experience ultimately of being a professional athlete at this level is just recognizing like you can't put all your eggs in one basket. And, I have a sports psychologist I work with, and she frequently reminds me that like my success is like kind of like a compiling of all of the results. It's not based on one race or one season. And it helps have like a bigger picture, especially for the athletes that are like really competitive, and that's most people. So
Yeah.
I think if you can take like a more of an eagle eye perspective of like your whole career or your whole like life as an athlete, even if you're not a professional, like you generally have a little bit more peace and grace to yourself. And I think any athlete can utilize that mindset a little bit more.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can speak from a rookie weekend warrior, Iceman racer, where there's been years where you're so trained, so dialed, and the littlest thing happens, and it's like devastates you. Versus, still train hard. Or actually, some of the years that I've done decent, I know you can't do this at your level, but some of the years where you're a little less trained, it better success, less, mental, this, that. But you're at the sharp point of the top of the world, so we can't talk about.
Yeah. But in a way, we kind of can, because Unbound for me was like that. I mean, I had surgery on my ankle 12 weeks before, and I took like 5 or 6 weeks either off or like no training to let the ankle heal after surgery. And yeah, I do think like sometimes the low expectations kind of can help. So
Sure.
I think it applies.
That's good to hear. That's good to hear from someone like you. So that is good for listeners to hear too. Where there is that Brad White from Velo. I don't know if you know, in town, and I just remember him saying, overhearing him one time when I was really pushing for it and whatnot, and I just hey, what's some of your pointers or tips? And he said, ride your bike, seat time, and I'm like, that's pretty good advice for somebody, at a super high level. It's a lot of it is seat time, and you gotta, let's talk about that. What are some of the ways that you keep it fun? Because you've got to hit your hours per week. You've got to hit your intervals. I'm sure you've got to do this and that. Is there any tips or tricks that you use to keep it fun?
Yeah, I mean, consistency is key for training for sure. And sometimes riding the amount of volume that I put in is not always fun. And so like I have to accept that at times. But like I kind of have a rule of thumb is like, there might be days where I like maybe I'm dreading riding, or like I know it's gonna be a hard day and I'm like, ooh, okay. But like if I have multiple days in a row where I'm like not wanting to ride or it's not fun, then that's like a huge red flag to me. And like immediately I'll talk to my coach. And so that's like really important to recognize that like it's not always fun, but you should, for the most part, be having fun. And so I think for me, it's I keep training playful as much as I can. And so a lot of times I'm not looking at power or metrics. And that's really helpful for me. I also have a really good internal clock of like, I'm roughly at this wattage because of my RPE, or rate of perceived exertion, is pretty dialed. But yeah, like a lot of times when I train, I'm just looking at a map and I have the time, and that's really about it. Unless I'm doing more specific like VO2 intervals or, punchy stuff where I have a power target. So I think for me, removing metrics actually helps me have more fun, because it's less of something I'm chasing or a number I have to hit, and I'm just like more enjoying the experience. I also think that it's really important to ride with groups and with other people, because that camaraderie and community is really important. And I think athletes sometimes get so set on this, like, this is my training plan, I have to follow it exactly. And so I think it's really important to, especially if athletes are working with coaches, there should be flexibility in the plan to like have fun, do a group ride. I also once a week do what I call gratitude miles. And it's basically like, I go do whatever I want, whether that's like
Sure.
playing or, coffee stop or ride with friends. And I try to intentionally think about like what I'm thankful for. And for me, like being thankful helps me be like happier. And so that's like another thing. And then, yeah, just trying to focus on what's fun. And for me, that's, riding with other people, trying new routes, doing a big adventure, sometimes bike packing or point to point rides. I live in Arkansas, and there's some really cool places to ride just south of town. Sometimes it's just a day trip to change up training plan. There's so many ways, whether that's segment hunting for some people. You kind of have to find your own fun, but I think, yeah, it's different for everybody.
Cool. Yeah. So you have like, you said a gratitude day, like one day a week is kind of like that's awesome. I like the sound of that. It's like a
Yeah.
recovery day, gratitude day, and just, I like that. That's pretty dang cool.
Yeah, and for some people, I used to coach and I had an athlete. He once told me, he's like, I'm not thankful to ride slow. So we made his gratitude day like a free hammer day. And it's like, go ride as hard as you want. And like, that's your gratitude day. So yeah, it's different for everybody. But yeah, generally it's just like shutting your mind off to what you think you're supposed to do and just like having fun and being thankful for your health or smashing the pedals or whatever it may be.
No, that's great. That is great. So as I knew coming on, just because these conversations were going to go so good, we're already way off of like my different questions, but it's great because I know some of them that I wanted to ask. So with the Lifetime thing, that is like so cool. When they started televising it the way they do, and they get in the helicopter and they build this story around you guys, they interview you. They're sitting there, interviewing you while they're playing the race in the background, and they amazing storytellers, and the energy and the time that they're thankfully doing to put that together. But it leads me to think of a bunch of different questions, like, you're racing with the top gals. You are a top gal. You're racing with top gals in the country. What's that like traveling from city to city? Do you guys go do trail course recon together? Do you train together? Is it separate quarters? I mean, talk a little bit about what it's like behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting for the women's field because this is actually the first year where we've had our own race, and a lot of times like we've been in the men's field. So I want to point that out because it changes the dynamic of how we race, because now we're racing against each other, whereas before it was basically like find the fastest male and hold onto the wheel, or a lot of women were using male domestiques. And, that was kind of like, you didn't need the other women to get to the finish line faster. You just needed to find a strong male. And so the dynamic now and the mindset is different. And the men have had this camaraderie and race dynamic of racing each other for many, many years since their inception of racing. But for women, it's new. This year is the first year that we've started that. And so it's been interesting to learn different racing styles and personalities that the other riders have. I'd love to say that we're all friends and we're chit-chatting, and but it's there's a lot of money on the line, like not just the prize money, but sponsorships, and it's very cutthroat at this level.
Okay.
And so no, we're not. A lot of us are not training together. I mean, I have certain people. There's friendships that are within the pack, and I think that camaraderie will improve the more and more we race together. And I'm already seeing that. And it's really nice to have that developing, because I think that's important and helps grow the sport. But yeah, like usually you kind of have your teammates or your people that you trust, because everyone holds their cards kind of close to them. You kind of have to protect yourself and your assets and the way you race, etc. So it's a pretty closed circuit, which can feel isolating sometimes. But for me, I'm on a team, which is actually kind of nice. Like I'm privateering, but I also have a team aspect, which a lot of riders don't have both. So I race for Trek Driftless, and like I have a teammate, Haley. And so we also have Finsty and Toby, the two males. And so it's the four of them, or the four of us, with our two mechanics and our team manager. And we often have a photographer, video guy that's with us too. And so it's really nice because I'm not going to the events alone. I have that whole team and support system built in, and it's the same people every race. And for me, that's great because it provides some stability and feels like a family unit that's traveling, like a traveling circus to all these races.
Sure.
And so, yeah, sometimes Haley and I will link up for a ride, or I'll go ride with Finsty and the guys and Toby, and just kind of sit in and do recon with them. But yeah, generally we get to the races like on Wednesdays, and we spend Wednesday, Thursday, Friday doing recon and predominantly like equipment choices. There's a lot of changes we can make, chainring size, looking at gearing data, tires, pressure, that sort of thing. So it's pretty busy those few days. And then oftentimes we have a lot of media and sponsor obligations too. Yeah, so the team helps with groceries and different things like that, which can be helpful. But yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
No, that really answers that thoroughly answered my question. Yeah, yeah, it makes total sense. And that's so cool that you have a team. I knew that you were with Trek and everything, but I didn't realize that there was an expanded portion of that, which really is cool. Because has it always been like that, or was some of your first lifetime were you solo, and was that massively different, or did you always have a little bit of a team?
Yeah, so this is a first year that our team has been a lot more performance oriented with Trek, which has been really nice because all four riders, like, we have a similar mindset. We want to get to the races early, and we have the same priorities. Like, we're there to perform well, and the team structure is built around that, which is nice. Last year, like, gravel's still evolving and so new, and the teams and sponsors are also trying to figure out what that looks like. And so the team was a little bit more lax and maybe not as performance oriented. So sometimes that is more of a challenge, just because riders that are there have different, goals or mindsets. And so, yeah, I think this year's probably been the smoothest year in terms of like support and kind of like having a team that has like the same mindset. When I first started, a lot of times I would go to the events with a few other people because I've always kind of been on a team. Before Trek, I was with Avis Pro Gravel, and so we always had people that we were traveling with. So yeah, I've never really been alone, which has been nice.
Right.
And then I'm a pretty social person, so even if I'm going to an event and there's I don't have my teammates there, I'm often going with a group of other people. I'll just text some of the other riders that I know are going and be like, hey, do you want to share housing? Or I did that before Leadville. I got there earlier before my team, and I linked up with Crystal Anthony and a bunch of the Live Giant riders. And yeah, it was just kind of fun to, have that community feel again too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, that is so cool. So yeah, like you mentioned, you finished this year in the Lifetime Series. You finished third overall, which is pretty dang good. That had to feel pretty good. And what you had the injury? Was the injury this year or last year's? Last year.
No, it was this year. Yeah. So back in, it was actually on Valentine's Day. I was doing a 6-hour mountain bike ride. Anyone familiar with this area? It was like the back 40 tunnel vision. Yeah. And so it was like both of those commuting from Bentonville. And I was probably on like hour 5 of the ride. Like, I was almost done, and there was like a wet route. And yeah, I just crashed and tore my SPR structure in my ankle that kind of holds the tendon in place. And so I had to have a reconstruction of that structure, and repair that because I tore the tendon too. So yeah, pretty extensive surgery. And then, yeah.
Surgery this year and still finished third.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had to skip Sea Otter. And then, yeah, Unbound was kind of, just 12 weeks after surgery. And even the night before Unbound, I didn't know if I was going to be finishing, because I still at that point was not able to walk on uneven surfaces well. And we were supposed to be getting a little bit of rain. So I remember telling the mechanics, I wrote their numbers on the back of my, race plate, because I was like, I probably won't finish, because if I have to walk, or if there's any mud, or I have to dismount, like, I'm not going to be able to walk through the mud. So yeah, I kind of was planning to call them. And I also knew, like, at that point in the race, I think it was like 100 miles in, I kind of threw in like a pretty big effort and split the group that we had down to like that finishing group of 10 to 12. And I was like, I'm probably going to blow up at any point in time, but, might as well try, like, low expectations. And yeah, thankfully ended up going to the line for the sprint, and surprising myself and probably everyone else there. But yeah, you just never know. Sounds like, I nailed my fueling really well. And I think if you get the nutrition down at Unbound, like that and alone you can have a good day, which is kind of
Sure.
crazy to think about. But yeah, it's a long one.
Yeah, I can't believe that. Yeah, that was in this year. So for you to come back, and that's just amazing, and I do remember that, the sprint and everything on Lifetime for that race you're talking about. It's so cool how they cover that. Once again, you guys gotta, if you haven't, go to YouTube, look it up. It's amazing. A couple other questions here I had on here that, couple things that just come to mind too. So like family and friends, like when you said, hey, I got this career, I got this, great career that I have going. This biking thing's going well. I think I'm going for it. I mean, what was the mind's out? What was everybody's reaction? How did those conversations go?
Yeah, I mean, I had like a pretty successful career as a PA. I was a PA for 8 years. I was ATLS trauma certified, and yeah, I'll be honest, I was a little nervous to talk to my family about it, especially my parents, because they were like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're gonna quit your job where you're actually saving lives, and then you're gonna go like race bikes." And so, I think the van made it worse because a lot of people thought I was like living out of my van down by the river.
I actually thought maybe you were too.
Yeah, no, like I had housing and like I rarely slept in the van for like multiple nights, unless I was like up at Leadville or trying to camp, in a remote area or something.
Mhm.
But the van provided like a stable like kitchen and bed and like, a halfway point if I was driving 12 hours to break it up. But yeah, I remember sitting down with my family and kind of like not knowing how they would respond. But I think my family knows me really well that like whatever I set my mind to do, like I'm going to do. So it was less of asking and more of like, hey, guess what? This is what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I think they've learned at this point that like they just have to support me because I have my mind made up. But they were really supportive. My immediate family was great. And yeah, I think that they've seen my success and are happy for me. And I will say it's a huge compromise because I have to miss out on a lot of family, obligations, and training and racing season is extremely demanding, and there's not a lot of compromises that can be made, especially with like getting sick or traveling and things of that sort. I usually when I'm in important race block, like I don't really go out to eat. I don't go out in public, or
Mhm.
I won't travel or have my family travel to me because the risk of getting sick is also high. So there's a lot of compromises and ways of living that they've had to adjust to, and they've been super supportive, which has been good. And yeah, like both my mom and dad were at Iceman, which was really cool, and both my sisters were there. So yeah, it's been nice to have their support.
That is cool. I can just imagine sitting down and you being very driven like that. Hey guys, this is what I'm doing. And I can just picture everybody looking and then just kind of saying, let's support her, let's go. She's gonna do it.
Yeah. And I kind of like I did tell myself, I was like, okay, I have 2 years to like try to make this like work and be successful and kind of like see what happens. And yeah, like this year I was up for renewal on like all my contracts. I was nervous because the industry, like isn't doing as well. And, I didn't know what that looked like for me in terms of salary and support and all of these other things. And, I always have the fallback on medicine, which is nice because I don't feel pressured to take deals or sponsors that like aren't in agreement with like what I feel my market value is, or aren't in alignment with like what my goals are personally. So that's also been really nice, is just to know that like I do have other options if I choose that. And I think that autonomy frees up a little bit better decision making on my end too.
Sure. No, that's amazing. I mean, I'm just even, as you were saying that, I was picturing even, 10 years, 15 years down the road, whatever that looks like, you just created an awesome, career at, for post at the front racing too, right? I mean, you basically can do everything in the industry. You've got the industry ties, you've got the name, which we haven't got to yet, the passion for, getting other young gals maybe out on bikes and getting other people, females in general, out on bikes and all that. You just have this platform now that, ride this pro wave as long as you can, and then you get two nice fallbacks. You get the medical and you got this, so you're sitting pretty good.
Yeah. But I'm thankful for the opportunity for sure. The results obviously help, but yeah, I've had to learn the social media side of things, and I'm still working on that too. But yeah, it definitely helps having the support of some big brands for sure.
Absolutely. So I mentioned that briefly, and there's a term on your website, and you have to actually tell me more about that. It's what's the term on your website? I'm drawing a blank.
Rosie up?
Maybe that's what it is, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah,
Sorry.
yeah, Rosie up. Yeah. So people that have followed me have probably been aware of my Rosie the Riveter. That's either been on my kit. So yeah, it was on my deltoid last year and also on my helmet. And then this year was on the back of my jersey. And it always kind of says somewhere on my kit, usually says she believed she could, so she did. And
Yes.
yeah, I'm really big on empowering more women to ride bikes and to race gravel. And I've been, since I started, really passionate about getting adult women resources to riding and learning, because there are a ton of resources for youth, and those are really important. And those obviously need to grow, but there's also a huge gap in services and resources for adult women. And so that's kind of where I'm passionate about, is getting, those women resources and trying to empower them to ride their bikes more. And I think the industry as a whole has this large gap of services. So for example, there's a lot of pink it and shrink it group rides that are really beginner friendly and welcoming, and kind of a slower pace and more community driven, which are great. And then you have these really racy group rides that are often male dominated and quite intimidating. And most people that are trying to be faster are maybe too afraid to try that out. So there's nothing in between that kind of blends those together. So over the last 2 years, I've kind of tested a couple different formats of group rides, and I actually went through a business startup at the beginning of the year at the University of Arkansas for this, and established a business called Rosie Up. And
Okay.
Rosie Up is
I saw something.
yeah. Rosie Up is a business that will basically hopefully build resources for these women. So for example, just I think it was two weeks ago, I partnered with another professional cyclist, Crystal Anthony, and we led a women's gravel camp here in Bentonville. And so it was a 3-day camp. The women came in and we had a mechanic on site, Ben, one of the local guys here, and he taught the women everything they should know about their bikes, and open Q&A, which was super helpful. We did cornering, pace line, descending, all these different skills, body bike separation, and drills that they can then go home, and a lot of nutrition. So yeah, we're going to be leading those camps probably twice a year for women. And then the long-term goal is to get what I refer to as Rosie Up hubs across the US. And so these are basically hubs that model this group ride that I've tested out in various communities. And it's basically kind of start off as a no drop ride, and then you session a smaller loop, and you allow these women to pace line together and really learn how to hold a wheel through a corner, how to corner at speed. And it's just a more safe, welcoming environment for them to try to go faster, and just to help show these women that you can go faster when you work together. Because often I see these groups of 6 women that are just kind of blob together, and they're not really pulling or working, and they don't know how. And so it's just teaching them pace lining and how to corner as a group to go faster together. And that's been really empowering once it clicks, and it's been fun to see. So still working on that. It's been a little bit slow this year just because I have a lot on my plate.
Yeah, you're a little busy.
Yeah, a little busy. And then the goal in the future is to have other resources that are available as well. But yeah, that's kind of the premise or the motivation behind the business.
Now I'm really glad I asked, because I thought it was kid-based, and which is fine too, but there's a decent amount of that. But what you described is something that I struggle with here. And we do a ton of group rides, and we kind of actually started as a bunch of couples that would meet and ride, and that worked out really well. And then it evolved into a little bit of like what you said, like, on our gravel route, it turned into a speed fest, and all of a sudden it's all guys. And then our Thursday gravel mountain bike ride is still, 85% competitive. And me wanting to get more people into the sport, I kind of have this knack of like, that I like to get people into the sport, and middle-aged, and then say, and now you need to try Iceman, or now you need to try, I like to try to, and it's been awesome. I get them in the sport and they all start kicking my butt, but that's fun. But the women's side, like you're saying, there is a huge, and if you do one in Grand Rapids, I already have 2 or 3 gals in mind, that one of them that I'm thinking of, her name's Robin. She does a Tuesday ride for me through our adventure brand, and it's White Pine Trail, no drop. And, she's had mild success so far, but it's something that we want to kind of pour energy into, because you're right. Even at our mountain bike rides, I'm always like, hey, so-and-so, you should come. So-and-so, you should come. Well, last time I came, I was the only female. And then they come in, but they come at different times, and so it's
I've had to learn that myself, is just to be okay. Like, it's a male dominated sport. And like, if that bothers you, like, it doesn't change unless you show up. And so that would be like my advice to like any female listeners. Like, I know it's discouraging and it's like frustrating, but it's like, it doesn't change unless you're there. And so sometimes like I'll see that, I'm like, well, I don't know if I want to go to that, or like it's all dudes, but then I just tell myself, well, if I come consistently, then maybe other women will. And hopefully it's like a cascade. But yeah, I also think like women are really strong and they can probably outride a lot of men. So it's just like that has to be okay too. And to be totally honest, like, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now if it wasn't for a lot of males, and predominantly ones in Michigan, like, Nick DeHaan, Earl, like those guys that were there, like, they really like mentored me and took me under their wings and like made me feel comfortable in a pack of men, or like didn't make me feel stupid around bike maintenance stuff, like all of these things. And so, yeah, I kind of look back and think like I'm helping other women, but like, the guys, like, there were a lot of guys that helped me. So I'm thankful for that. And I always tell guys, like, if you see a woman at a ride, like, talk to them, like, make them feel welcomed, like, go out of your way to make sure that they feel comfortable and accepted in that group.
Yeah, it is so difficult as a group trail ride coordinator. Like, my dream is to have 50 people in the parking lot in like 3 different groups, but I've tried, and we have lots of times where there's 50 people or so, but it's, to cater, the moons have to align for it to be, all groups. We even tried having captains of different levels. But I'm not giving up. I'm going to keep trying. So let's keep moving here. I had a couple just random questions. What was one of the toughest things that you can remember in the last few years? What was one of the toughest things of being a professional gravel racer?
Oof.
That you didn't expect.
Yeah, there's a lot.
We got another hour, no, it's kidding.
Yeah, I think so many people look at what I'm doing or like see the YouTube highlights and be like, oh, like how fun, like she gets to go race her bike and like what a cool job. But the reality is like it's so hard. Like the level of training that we're doing and what we're expecting out of our bodies and the compromises that we make to get to that performance level are so high. And so there's been a lot of like hard things physically, just recognizing like the mental energy that it takes to compete at this level. So like that's been something that was a surprise. But I think like for me, for gravel, it was the unexpected mechanicals that has been probably the hardest thing to deal with. Because, for example, at Unbound last year, I gave up my entire spring of racing to like stack races and really build that training load and through racing. And like, I was ready to win Unbound last year. Like I had like incredible fitness, like I lived in Emporia for 6 weeks before. And then I had a freak accident, and my derailleur fell off. So,
Mm.
you can't even control that. That was 23 miles into a 200-mile race. And
Mm.
so it's just like these are a thing that it's like, it's really hard because you cannot control so much of what happens.
Mhm.
So a lot of our like training in life is so focused on controlling all these little things, not getting sick, what your training is, like what you're eating, your diet, like everything, your travel schedule. And then all of a sudden you have everything you've done correctly and that has been in control. And you have one thing that just like totally derails it all.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to manage that. And that has been a learning curve for me. I feel like I'm a lot better this year, but I
Sure.
learned that the hard way.
Sure.
And I think really having your head on straight and getting your life in order outside of being a professional athlete is really important. Like if this is the only thing in my life that matters, then like you're probably not going to be sustainable at that level for very long because that's just not healthy.
Sure.
So yeah, it's just like finding the balance there. I also will say like the tax and accounting and insurance side of things has been really stressful because as a PA, like I got a paycheck every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah.
like, now I have to like invoice my sponsors and keep track of who's paid me. And like, then you have prize money from events. You have to track that down. And so it's just kind of like, that's stressful. And then like, what can
Sure.
you write off, what you cannot? And I'm just like, oh man, paying on insurance is not fun. Yeah.
Sure.
So it's just like, these are little things that like, there's no school of like how to be a professional racer outside of racing. And a lot of people think I have like all this free time. Like most of the time I'm like doing accounting work or trying to, all the emails with the sponsor obligations. Like I'm managing like 6 or 7 different contracts with different brands. So it's a lot to manage and
Sure.
a lot of testing of equipment, like all the stuff off the bike really does add up for sure.
No, I bet. Yeah. Our 26-year-old son, hopefully he doesn't listen to this. He's like, talks about, say like you and, oh, she's got it made, she's got it, whatever. Or, dad's doing well in real estate or, all these other different things. I'm like, but you don't understand like the grind. Like you see this. Yeah.
Tip of the iceberg.
Yes. It's, so I don't know if there've been young kids listening this far in or whoever, but no matter what you're doing that's successful, they've been at that craft for a while. And they've been at that craft for a while. And what they do off, behind the scenes is a lot of work.
Yeah. Like it has to be something you enjoy. Like I love all these little details. Like I love all of the work I have to put into it. And like keeping things fun is just super important because there's a lot of it that like is not always fun. And that's okay too. Like every job has that. And I remind myself, I'm like, well, I had bad shifts in the ER where I didn't like being a PA. And there's just certain days where I'm doing accounting work that I don't love it either. So, it's still work. Like I think,
Yes. Yes.
I'm like, I love my job, but I also like, there's days where, I just want to go ride my bike.
Yeah, exactly. And I actually haven't been riding my bike enough because of the stress of work. So I got to get back at it. You brought up a good point, and that is one of my questions. So I'm glad you said something. Hobbies outside of professional cycling. What do you got? What do you do?
Baking, eating, and napping.
Those count.
Yeah, it's hard because cycling is such a time-intensive sport. And it also like, I have contracts that even state that I can't necessarily do certain sports outside of cycling because they're very injury risk. So I always have to be mindful of outside hobbies, hobbies outside of cycling. Like if there's a injury to my body that could occur, like I have to be mindful and respective of that risk because it would not be good for me to get injured in that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, you can't play pickleball.
Yeah, I probably could, but I'm not going to go downhill skiing.
Right.
Like I couldn't imagine. Like it's one thing if I get injured riding a bike, but like my sponsors are investing a lot in me, and I want to do everything in my power to like stay healthy and race at the highest possible level that my body can output for them.
Yeah.
But with that said, yeah, like I just love anything outdoors, like camping, hiking, walking. Yeah, I love camping in this area in Arkansas. It's like absolutely beautiful. Bike packing is a lot of fun. Baking, I love sourdough. I'm really into sourdough.
Okay.
I make these little sourdough biscuits, homemade rye
Nice.
snacks. Like I just enjoy cooking and baking. That's a lot of fun. Spending time with family and friends, community. And then, yeah, reading is also another big one too. But yeah, like I don't have a ton of time and energy to do a lot of other physical activities, at least when I'm during a season. But if it's something outside, then like it's usually something I will enjoy doing.
Yeah, yeah, perfect. Spending time outside, in that you're in, I am so jealous of where you now live. I mean, we were down there for Bike Fest, obviously not the best Bike Fest year with the tornado, but yeah, you are in Disneyland. I mean, that is so cool down there. We haven't decided if we're going there this March or where we usually bounce somewhere warmer. But yeah, you're in an awesome area down there. So kudos to you. Let's wrap up talking a little bit about this because I can't be on a Michigan podcast and not talk about the Iceman word. So Iceman, and some gravel racers might not know much about it. So hopefully tell all your friends, bring them up here next year. bring them. What's your Iceman? I tried looking at your results from early for those last couple of years, and I was running out of time. So tell me how your Iceman has progressed. And I know you had an issue. We were all cheering you up wood chip and cheering you on, and then found out you crashed or you got in an accident. You didn't crash. I forget how you tell the story.
Yeah, I mean, it's just such a special event, and I'm always proud to go back to Michigan and to see everybody and to see everybody show up at that event. Yeah, I love it. So this year for me, I'll be honest, like mentally, I was there and wanted to race and wanted to, and I, was going for it. But then my body was just kind of checked out, and I just wasn't feeling, there was a lot of signals that I observed. My body was trying to tell me that it was time for off season.
Sure.
And I had a couple mechanicals, like my valve cores were left open at the start. And so I had 13 PSI in both
I read
tires.
that or heard that. I think I read that.
Yeah, it was on my YouTube recap. So that was like, it made the whole race a complete slog. Not to mention like cornering was just complete garbage because of it. Yeah, so that was like kind of not super fun, but it's like one of those things where like, okay, like something you can't control, like you just have to modify your expectations. But then yeah, coming into wood chip, I was like kind of near the front and I wanted to be like top 4 or 5 into the base of
Chain breaker. Yeah, how come I'm drawing
icebreaker.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was about to enter that like Steve Stash, that little like fresh cut single track.
Yep.
And I think I was like 5th at that point. I'm okay, that's perfect. Can make a big dig for icebreaker. And then yeah, a rider on the left-hand side like turned into me. And I don't know if there's their body or their bar. Because like I was like this and they hit my wrist and I kind of like I knew something happened there, so I had to take my hand off of the bar and then I crashed. And yeah, I ended up tearing my ECU subsheath in my wrist. Didn't know at the time. I still finished the race, but I was 10th. And yeah, I did a fireball hand up and I took a couple dollar bill hand ups at the top of icebreaker. At that point, I was like, whatever, like my day's
And you're
done.
still within a minute, I think, if I read, after doing all that, you're still.
Yeah. Yeah. So it wasn't, I mean, honestly, I was pretty disappointed. And then of course, like I couldn't go out with everybody. I spent like hours in the urgent care, like trying to figure out, yeah, just at home, like in pain, trying to figure out what to do with my wrist. I ended up getting medical care back in Grand Rapids, and back home the next day. But yeah, not my ideal Iceman. But the years before, I've been top 5 the last 2 years prior to that.
Yeah.
And then I think my first year doing it, I think I was like just near the top 10 on like a borrowed bike, my first mountain bike race ever.
Yeah, I read that on your blog today. I was doing my stock and I had to do my stuff.
Yeah, you were. Wow. But yeah, I mean, I don't I hope one of the years like it will line up for me there. But yeah, just was not in my cards this year. Then Melissa got off the front, the girl who won, and like I didn't even like there was a gap in the single track, and like she like I don't even know when she went off. Like it wasn't even like I remember thinking like, wait, where's Melissa? And yeah, she got up the road at some point. So it just kind of was a weird day.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, she must I forget where if I heard where she made her break, but yeah, yeah, you brought up something that I wanted to ask. So I mean, I'm getting old. I'm 50, and when we after the race and after watching you guys, and we have our adult beverages, by 7 o'clock, I'm like falling asleep or whatever. But then you hear like Alexi and all those guys and the winners. Can't think of the Canadian's name right now, but the men Canadian that won.
I don't remember because I just went home after, so I didn't really like pay attention.
But dude, I was wondering, like, end of the season, all those guys go out, and so Alexi was talking about it on one of his vlogs, and I'm and he's like, yeah, and then like at 2 a.m, I'm like, I wondered if at the end of the season these professional athletes go out afterwards. And
yeah, I mean, like at Big Sugar, there's like the gravel rave too, and yeah, I mean, a lot of people like totally let loose because it's so strict during the season. And I did like at Big Sugar at the end of that. I like had someone poured me a glass of wine and I had like 2 sips and I was like, I'm not gonna feel good tomorrow. And I had no interest. So yeah, I went home. I went to bed.
yeah,
And yeah, I feel like I'm just getting too old for that. I don't know.
yeah.
I don't know if anyone like listening like wears a Whoop, recovery and they track that, but like alcohol is like the number one worst thing that you can do for your body when it's trying to recover.
Yes.
So yeah, I just haven't really found enjoyment in going out and celebrating. Like, but I do think like it's fun to go out at Iceman, no matter how wrecked it makes your body feel, just because like everyone's out and there's a huge community side of it too. So yeah, I was bummed to miss that this year for sure.
Yeah, I've heard different pros talk about that they can't wait to come to Iceman just because, and they've compared it to races overseas. They compare it to all the different places and just the people pounding on the the signs and we like to go over to wood chip where there's still no barriers at. Don't put barriers over there, guys. We like to be close to the racers. I don't know if you guys like that. One guy this year, all of us were kind of mad at him. One guy, when the men came through, ran right up in front of him. I'm like, moron. I mean, that's not cool.
When you mix alcohol and cheering, I think it can get a little out of hand. I wouldn't be surprised if they add barriers, to be honest. But hopefully not.
Yeah, it's fun to it's just as most people listening to it this far into it have been to Iceman, but if not, go to it. It's hard to describe, and it's really cool because we like putting our effort out on the course, and then after we're done, we like to get that good meal in, and then watch you guys come, make those hills look like they're flat, coming up, and it's just it's hard to explain as you have witnessed or but so Iceman's got a special spot in my heart, getting people into racing and stuff, but.
Oh, for sure. It's a vibe. You just got to be there.
Yes. Well, Paige, it's been awesome. Thank you for spending some time with us. I learned a ton. And I didn't know that you were full-time in Bentonville or Arkansas. So awesome. Is there some handles that people can look you up on if they want to watch? I know you have a YouTube video out. You have a YouTube channel as well?
Yeah, I started a YouTube channel this year. So if you find me on YouTube, Paige Onweller is the channel. And then, Instagram, Paige Powered is the handle there. And then, I have a website, pagepowered.com, and that has a contact me if anyone's ever interested in reaching out directly. Lots of ways to follow along. And yeah.
You do a little coaching too, did I see on your website?
Yeah, I'm not taking any new clients at the moment. I'm actually like kind of paused. I'm not coaching anyone right now, just because things are pretty busy and I want to focus a little bit more effort on Rosie Up. Paused for now on that.
And to close this up, any big announcements you can let us know about 2025 that you're kind of getting excited about? Anything new that we should or just kind of hitting the off season, training hard and coming out going crazy next year? Anything you want to?
Yeah, I mean, still in off-season mode. I just took 3 weeks off, like no exercise. So, I would say my closing words are just to take some rest. And yeah, for me, looking forward to January, making some announcements on sponsors, and yeah, just excited and thankful to have another year racing full time.
Awesome. Well, thanks for doing what you do. It keeps us weekend warriors kind of entertained and excited, and gets the juices flowing while we're watching Lifetime. And then we go out and do our local trails and have fun. So keep doing what you're doing, and we really appreciate it.
Thanks.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks for spending time with us.
Mark. All right. Bye.
See you. Bye.